Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Investors Gallery. For those who are new, because we have another celebrity on today, and you're just finding out about the podcast, Investors Gallery is a podcast that I do in the home that I built. Not the home, actually, I'm sorry, the office. So everything behind me, if you're watching on video, I built, but more importantly, on the other side is an art gallery that I built as well. The running joke is sooner or later, we're going to shoot this in the actual art gallery. So that's why it's called Investors Gallery. So my name is Presley. I'm here in Houston, and I am half of Dimensional Capital Partners. The other half is Melvin Fairby. He is also a securities attorney, and we do multifamily stabilize and development as well. So Matt, I am so soon as I put on the interwebs that you were going to be on, people started coming out the woodworks like, wow, this is going to be amazing. So I read your background, and obviously I see a lot of your posts, but for those who don't know you, don't know your background, give a little bit about what you do, what you did, and then how you got into real estate, and then we'll go from there as I drink my caffeinated juice.
Oh, caffeinated juice.
Yes, my brain shuts off at 8 o'clock, so this is the only way I can stay up and talk.
But that's really that is really caffeinated.
Yeah, it's called Buy.
Oh, I've seen it in the store. Okay, yeah, I've seen it in the store. I didn't know what it was.
And it's healthy.
Well, I'm just drinking some H2O right now, so I'm a little boring, but I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and I moved to New York City to pursue a career in theater. And I was actually a professional actor for 5 years. I was in 15 different productions all across the United States. Started doing some hobby work in computers back in the late 90s, and ended up starting my own digital agency doing website development back in the, like I said, in the .com heydays of the late 90s. 2001 came along and the .com bubble burst, and all of my clients were going out of business, and my business was imploding. I mean, if my client wasn't going out of business, they definitely weren't spending money on any digital marketing. Right. And just at that perfect timing, I got a phone call from my landlord who told me I had 90 days to get out of the apartment that I was living in. So here I was in New York City without really a job, with a business that has completely failed, wanted to stay in New York, but didn't know how to do it. In that 90-day period, I ended up getting a job at Showtime. They were a client of mine, the cable television channel. So I started working there. And instead of renting another apartment, I actually found an apartment to buy. Now, it wasn't where I wanted to live. It was way, way, way upper Manhattan in an area called Washington Heights, but it was something that I could afford at the time. And a little over 2 years later, I ended up selling that apartment and seeing my initial investment more than quadruple in value. Wow. Yeah. So that was an amazing moment for me. In that one transaction, I made more than an entire year's worth of salary, and I had a pretty good job at that point. So I wanted to know, how can I make that happen again? And that's,
was it a surprise? Did you know that the values were going up, or you said, it's time to move?
No, I had no idea. I mean, I knew that real estate was something good to do. At one point, when I was a kid, my dad was a real estate broker for a period of time. He then went into the food service industry. But so I had, known about real estate. I didn't really know how to do real estate, but I had, my dad had done a little something here and there. And so I figured it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to buy. And when I bought that place in Washington Heights, I really wanted to live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, but the rent prices were very high. So it was actually less expensive for me on a monthly basis to actually buy the apartment that I bought versus renting.
Wow, okay.
Now, I knew that apartment values tend to go up over time, right? Real estate tends to go up over time, but I had no idea that I'd be able to sell it in 2 years and have such a great return. And I mean, we could talk a little bit more about that deal. There's really 3 factors that deal did so well. Number one, real estate just in New York in general during those couple of years did exceptionally well. Number two, I was in the Washington Heights area, which was vastly improving. And, you know, they put a Starbucks on the corner just as I was moving in.
Oh,
So
wow.
that whole area was on the upward trajectory. But also I did some improvements on the property. You know, when I bought the apartment, there was a lot of cracks in the walls. So I got someone to come in and plaster those up and fill all the cracks and paint the place and made the place look nicer. But the building itself was very dated looking. I remember we had these like really disgusting, dirty, pink leather couches in the lobby area. And so when I first moved in there, this guy that I had known from my acting days actually had recently moved in there, maybe a year or two prior, and he was on the board. So this was a co-op building. He was on the co-op board, and I started talking with him, and we had a mutual friend. That's how I had known him from years ago. We became very friendly. And he said, hey, listen, we're thinking about the board, like, because I had mentioned sometime like, oh, we should update the lobby. And he said, we're going to make a committee to renovate the lobby. Like, would you want to be on that? And I said, sure. And I worked with him. It was actually me and him, another volunteer, another person from the board. And we hired an interior designer, and we redesigned the lobby and we redesigned the hallways. And so when all of that was done, the place looked a lot like much nicer and much more expensive than it had been when I bought it. And it turned out that it actually was, and I sold it for a very nice profit, and then was able to use those proceeds to go ahead and buy an apartment where I really wanted to live. You know, the story kind of just goes on and on from there. But that was really my first foray into real estate, and the thing that opened my eyes to the power of real estate investment. And then I did it as a hobby for about 10 years.
Wow.
Doing little things. And then about 7 years ago, I moved from New York City to Miami with my wife. She got a really cool job opportunity in Miami. We moved down there, and that's when I made the transition from part-time real estate to full-time real estate. And I became a full-time real estate investor and ultimately a real estate syndicator. So what I do now is I buy large apartment complexes, and I invite my friends, my real estate friends who are investors, to come along with me on those investments, and we'll pool our capital together, and we'll buy these large apartment complexes anywhere from 100 units to the largest thing we bought was a portfolio of a little over 1,300 units.
Wow. How did you make the choice to leave your passion of acting in that circle to full-time real estate?
Yeah, you know, it never was a conscious decision of, hey, I'm no longer going to act again. I had been on the road for about 5 years. I think I mentioned 15 different productions throughout the United States. I actually performed in every major city in the continental US.
Wow.
And I just was sick of traveling so much. And I wanted to just stay in New York. I felt like, look, 5 years, I've done a lot of regional theater. I've done a lot of tours. I've paid my dues. And I wanted to wait for a Broadway show. And I had, you know, at the time, Rent was running on Broadway. That was a big hit at the time. And I had a number of callbacks for that show. So I thought, hey, maybe eventually in a certain amount of time, I would get that show or another show. And while I was sort of, you know, waiting for my Broadway debut, if you will, I started doing website development before that I was waiting tables at the Hard Rock Cafe in between acting jobs, right? I was a waiter, and I learned some skills on the computer and was able to actually work, you know, normal hours and make really good money in between, you know, while I was waiting for my Broadway opportunity. And what happened was I was freelancing at a bunch of different, well, they didn't call them digital marketing back there. It used to be called new media. So I was working at these new media agencies back then. And I was working at one, and I got a phone call from somebody who had worked there who wanted me to work on a project. But I was already working on a project from 9 to 5. And I said, well, I can work on a project for you, but I have to do it like from home. Like I can't come into your office. And she was like, I don't care. That's fine. And she offered me even more than I had been getting paid at the other place. So I started doing that at night. And then I started doing it where I was just working from home like all the time. And then there was so much coming in, I couldn't do it all myself. So I got another desk and I would hire people to come in and work with me out of my apartment. And, I would charge like a slight markup on, whatever I was paying them hourly. And then I needed to get a third desk and I had no more room in my little New York City apartment. So then I got an office space. And that's kind of how that thing just organically grew to a point where I had 5 different desks in an office space on 19th Street. And things were just booming and booming and booming until the bubble burst. And then that was the rude awakening that I had. Now, during that boom time, which was about 5 years from once I started the agency to the time we closed our doors, I did get a call from a casting agent. And when you're a young actor and you're trying to get known and trying to make a name for yourself in the business, I mean, getting a call from a casting director, that's like amazing, right? And the reason why I got the call was a director who I had worked with before was doing a production of Cinderella, actually, that was going to go to Broadway. And Debbie Gibson, remember Debbie Gibson, the pop star? She was in it, and also Eartha Kitt. They were both going to be in it. And I got brought in by the director, and I went in to do my, sing and do a dance routine or whatever. And I go in there and I was terrible. So bad because I hadn't done it. I had been so busy with my business and really enjoying my business, because before that I used to train. I had a voice teacher. I would go to dance classes. I would go to acting classes. Like I would do all the things you need to do. I mean, just think about like a star athlete. If they don't work out or go to practice for a year, they're not going to be good.
Or 5.
So it had been, I think, about like a year or 2 since I hadn't really done any classes. I mean, I got the phone call and I got on the phone with my voice teacher, like, hey, can you squeeze me in? Like I tried to get back in shape, but I didn't do a great audition. I did okay. I did get a call back. So that was really cool. And ultimately I didn't get the part. But while that whole thing was going on, I was wondering, like, if I get this part, I want to go do it, but how is my business even going to function if I'm away? So once I found out I didn't get the role, it was almost a sigh of relief, because I was like, I didn't know how I was going to do everything. And I thought about it. I was like, I haven't done the acting thing at that point now for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't miss it.
Yeah.
And when I was younger and I was learning to be an actor, every teacher I had always told me, Matt, it is such a hard job. Like, you can be on Broadway one day and the next day your show closes for no fault of your own and you can be out of work, right?
Wow, yeah.
It's such a hard lifestyle. It's such a hard trying to be a performer. Like, if there's anything you could possibly see yourself doing and you'd be happy doing that, like, do something else. And I was always like, no, this is what I want to do. This is my chosen path. Like, this is what this is what I'm passionate about. And through, the circumstances of life that had come up and me tinkering around with computers and then people basically throwing money at me to do something, I had to start my own company. And we had a really cool office culture. It was like really fun. And I was like having the time of my life. And I was like, wow, I really love what I'm doing now. Yeah. And I'm making good money. What's the thing? And I'm not really missing that. I don't miss being out of work every 3 months and struggling and looking for, and I really, really loved what I was doing. So I just continued down that path. So there was never a conscious decision of like, I'm not going to act anymore, except for like then. But I think I had already like stopped acting. It was just more kind of like a realization. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not an actor anymore.
Yeah.
It kind of just
chose for you.
Yeah, it kind of did. It kind of just sort of happened. And I'm happy with it, and interestingly enough, and as we continue through my story or whatever, we can loop back around to it, but I'm very much involved in the theater now and a big supporter of the arts. It's something that's really important to me. and something I'm passionate about, but it's really something that I do kind of on my own time on the side.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah,
To
it's
give back.
awesome.
So take us back. So I don't know why Miami, Florida. Where did you move to from New York with your wife when your wife got the job?
That's right, Miami.
Okay. So
Yeah,
take us
so
back
my
there.
wife works on the business side of Broadway.
Okay.
And she got an opportunity out of the blue that was down in Miami. And it was just too good of an opportunity for her to pass up. So we moved down there. And that's when I decided to make the transition from the corporate digital marketing world. You know, I had worked up to be a vice president at an advertising agency to go ahead and pursue the real estate, which was really what my passion was. I had been doing it as a hobby for 10 years and really wanted to pursue that and did that. And, you know, it was a struggle for the first couple of years, honestly. It took me 2 years to get my first deal that I syndicated, that I brought out to investors. Now, during that time, I was investing. I had a little nest egg I had saved up over the years, and I was investing in other people's deals, multifamily syndication type deals. And I did some fix and flips during that time as well. But it took me about 2 years to get my first deal as a syndicator, where I put my own money behind a deal I really love and told, 30 of my closest friends, hey, come join me on this opportunity. And they did. And we bought a property, 132 unit property, $10 million purchase price. And we sold that property a couple years later and made a very nice profit.
I want to hear about your first property that you went passive on, because you were passive on all of your deals up until that point.
Yeah.
What was the thought process? How did you link up with the whoever you syndicated with to be a LP? How did that work, and how did those connections get made? Because you were coming from a totally different state.
Well, I was living in Miami, and I was flipping some properties and devouring everything I could get my hands on when it came to real estate, whether that was books, whether that was podcasts. If any person coming into town doing a seminar, I was joining it, going to it, trying to learn. And believe it or not, because it's really hard nowadays to go and look for a podcast and not find one on syndication, not find one on multifamily. But back then, back in early 2016, I couldn't find a darn thing about multifamily syndication. Wow. I didn't even know that multifamily syndication existed.
Yeah.
Okay. That's number one. But number two, there just wasn't anything out there, at least that came across my radar, that did it. And I was listening to some I don't know, maybe it was Bigger Pockets or the Real Estate Guys or something. I don't know. It was some podcast that I was listening. I think it was Bigger Pockets, and maybe one of the guys from the Real Estate Guys was, I don't know, somehow through the rabbit hole of hearing different guests on different podcasts, somewhere along the way, I heard somebody mention something about a real estate syndication, and that something about pooling people's money together. And I'm like, wait, what's
rewind that?
Well, because there's a preface to all of that. So I had bought an apartment in Brooklyn, New York, a townhome, 2-family town. I did what the kids nowadays are calling a house hack, but I didn't know there was such a thing. All I knew was like the numbers worked. I could, it was a 2-family, right? And one of the units was rented, and they were paying more than what half of my mortgage would be. They were paying more than half. So I was like, oh, wow, the numbers make sense on this. And so we bought it, we moved in, we were in one unit. And I thought to myself, this is back when I'm working in advertising full time. Well, if I were to sell this apartment, like, we renovated the unit that we were in, so it was nicer unit, and we had the backyard. Meanwhile, the upstairs tenants had a not nicer unit and did not have a backyard, and they were paying more than what half my mortgage payment was. So I knew that if I moved out and rented my apartment, I would be making more money. I'd be able to pay the mortgage and have surplus, right? Positive cash flow. And so I was like, wow, I didn't want to do that. Like, I need to buy another one. The problem is, it's, you can't get anything you can't get a townhouse in Brooklyn for less than, it's well over $1 million, right?
Nowadays, yep.
And no, back then it was, I mean, nowadays it's like 3
Because they
million.
used to be cheap though, right? They used to be dirt cheap until they started.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, depending on where and depending the neighborhood and all that stuff. But like back then, I mean, still, to buy a townhouse, in this neighborhood back then, probably would have cost around, $1.5 million, something like that, right? So you would probably need like a $400,000 down payment, maybe, 300, depending on how you finance it.
Right.
I didn't have that kind of money laying around. Like it just, it didn't exist for me. So, what I did was I thought, if I just continue to work my job, my 9-to-5 job, and I was getting paid pretty well as a VP at an agency at this point, and my wife was doing her thing, I could save up money, and maybe over the next like 5 or 6 years, I might have enough saved up to buy another townhome, like the one we had. If prices stayed the same, obviously they'd go up over time, but maybe I would eventually save up enough money to buy another one and then do that again, like maybe 4 times, maybe if I could have 4 or 5 townhomes, then maybe at that point, I would be at retirement age and have some 401k, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I've grinded it out and I'm able to retire and have money, that was my viewpoint, because I didn't know how could I get money and buy another townhome? How am I going to come up with 400, 500K, whatever I needed, right? And when we moved down to Miami, and I started hearing about syndicate, I started flipping properties, and I had friends who would say to me, hey, like, because I'd share them from, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing and it's kind of cool. And they'd be, oh, how much money are you going to make or whatever we talk about? And so, can I invest in one of your flips? But they were really small deals, like I would maybe make like 10 grand or 20 grand off of a deal. And it was like, it seemed like too small to like split with somebody. And I didn't even know how you would work that out, like how would that work out? And, they're putting in money, but I'm also putting in money. And how do they get what percentage with that? I just didn't even know how to do that. So I just never did it, but I had people who were interested. And now I'm like, oh, I'm hearing about syndication. And now I could talk to my friends who wanted to like invest in deals I was doing, and I could do bigger deals. And that was really appealing to me. And that's why I wanted to do the syndication. I went to some conferences, I met different people. One of the first people that I met at my first conference was actually in a mentorship group that I ended up joining. And that guy and I became very good friends. And he ended up getting a deal. And he said, hey man, I got a deal. And I'm like, I'm investing in your deal.
Right.
Who am I going to invest in? My first deal, I'm going to invest with my friend, right? So I invested with him. I have a book called Backstage Guide to Real Estate that I wrote. And I detail all of this in the book because it was an amazing learning experience. But the deal was like a colossal, I don't want to say colossal failure, but it was almost a colossal failure.
It was close enough, it sounds like.
It was really, really bad. It went really, really sideways. Luckily, and the biggest takeaway from that deal was the person that I invested with, that sponsor, he would not let that deal go down in flames. He's actually an airplane pilot, and he landed that plane safely. Now, we didn't really make it. We made a minuscule profit. And when you factor in the fact that we were in the deal for several years and, the opportunity cost of having my money tied up in that deal, but I put in a certain amount and I walked away with just a teeny bit more than that certain amount. So that was fine, but it's all because of him. I mean, had it been anybody else, I think we would have crashed and burned. I would have lost maybe all of my money, at least if not a significant portion of it. And that's when I came really clear to me that the most important thing in these deals is who's running the deal. I talk about in the book the 3 deal pillars, which are the sponsor, That's the person who's running the deal, the market, and then the deal itself. And out of those three, the most important is the sponsor.
What are some things that your partner did to save the deal?
Oh, he just left no stone unturned.
Okay.
He did every single thing he could to keep that property afloat. And at the very end, with a little bit of luck, he was able to find a person who was in a 1031 exchange situation and had capital that needed to be deployed in a relatively short period of time. And this was just a small portion. This guy had like gazillions of dollars. He was 1031ing, and he picked up the property for us. And I mean, now, you know, if you have a longer time horizon and knowing what's happened now, hindsight 2020, that guy probably did extremely well on the deal. But at the time, we were happy to just get out, you know. And we didn't have the money to keep the deal afloat for an indefinite period of time, which we would have needed to make it a success.
What are some takeaways you think you learned specifically from that property or from that deal?
Well, the biggest one was the sponsor, right? And knowing who the sponsor is and really understanding what their track record is. There's a million other little things that I learned, like you know, how to really look at the underwriting on a deal. I mean, I was very it was my first time, and so there's been so many lessons learned, but you know, that was one. The other one was like over improvement. Don't over improve your property. They misread their submarket. They thought they were in a much nicer submarket, so we end up spending, I don't know, $10,000 or $12,000, and this is several years ago, renovating the units. Like they did granite countertops. And
Oh, wow.
That were not needed. And you know, later on in the project, we ended up renovating a unit for like $2,000 with no granite countertops and got the same amount of rent for the one with the granite counter. You know, people can only pay a certain amount, right? Depending on where your market is and what the demographics for that property are, what's the household income and all of those other kinds of things. And if you don't look at them, you can over improve. But you know, if someone's only making $30,000 a year, they're only going to qualify for $10,000 a year in rent, no matter what. No matter if it's the Taj Mahal or it's a little studio, you know, it doesn't matter. That's what they can afford. And people who live in that area who can afford that certain price, that's what it is. So they misread the market, and they over improved. So that was a big lesson to me. You know, hey, make sure you don't over. I kind of knew that anyhow from the fix and flips I had done. But that was a big problem that we had on that property.
So how many deals between that deal and your 132 unit, or the one that you did by yourself? Well, not by yourself, but the one that you brought to market.
I invested passively, I think it was 5 deals.
Okay.
Before I had my first deal as a sponsor. And it wasn't the type of thing where I wanted to wait, like, oh, I need to have a certain amount of deals. The passive investing was sort of twofold for me. Number one, I had some capital that I wanted to deploy, that I wanted to invest in something. And number two, I wanted to invest in multifamily syndicators so I could learn from what other people were doing. I was very honest and very open with those sponsors. They all knew that I wanted to do sponsorship myself. And actually, I had conversations with all of them saying, hey, if I invest in your deal, I want to know that I'm going to be able to once in a while and not be obnoxious about it. But once in a while, if I have a question about something, I want to know that I can, send you an email or maybe even have a quick phone call with you so you can maybe explain stuff to me. And they all were like, sure, no problem. They were all really great about it. And so I did. I deployed capital into 5 different deals over the course, and it was never. I never had, like I said, a number set in mind. I just, as deals presented themselves, I would review them, and when I found something that seemed right, I would do that. And so by the time I did my first deal, which was 2 years later, And I had been searching and looking at deals and looking in different markets. I really felt comfortable with the whole process. You can learn only so much from, reading books or podcasts or even mentorship groups. When you're actually doing a deal and you're reading, 100 pages of legal documents between the PPM and the subscription document, and they're done by different attorneys, so you get to see the way different people do their deal. One deal I was almost ready to do, and I didn't like the way something was written and something was structured, and I walked away from that thing because I didn't like the way they were doing it. Interestingly enough, I pointed out to the sponsor, they didn't realize it was set up that way either, and they actually didn't like it. But it was too late. They already had deployed it out, and had a ton of people had already invested in the deal. They were like, wait, it doesn't say that. I'm like, well, on page 72, it actually. And they were like, oh wait, you're right. And then they called their attorney and called me back. They're like, you're right, that's what it says. And I'm like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable. So I learned a lot, and also by being invested in these deals, I saw reporting that I was getting, and I saw different sponsors' communication styles. And so from that, I was able to say, I like that this guy did that. I don't like that this other guy did that. This girl did this thing really well, so I want to emulate what she's doing, And so I was able to sort of put together my own thing, and also based on my own working in corporate America for a while, I had my own business practices as well, but kind of just meld it all together into the brand of reporting that I do now, which I like. I think it's really good. Up front in the body of the email, you get all your major KPIs, and then you can drill down further if you want to. I like it that way. I don't love when I get a monthly report and it's like, the monthly report is now on the portal. And then you have to click on the portal and log into the portal and then download a PDF from the portal. And then it's like, okay, steps. When just put it in the body of the email, at least the top line, tell me what's going on. And then if I want to drill down, I'll drill down. Especially when, as a passive investor, you grow. I mean, right now, 2/3 of my portfolio are deals I'm a limited partner in. That's over 7,000 apartment units that I'm invested in passively. So I get a lot of monthly reports, and it's like, I don't want to have to log in to 20 different portals and download 20 different PDFs. If I can just get everything top line and see how it's going. If it's going great, fine. I archive all my emails by deal, so you can go back if I want to, but drag it into that folder and then go to the next one. Now, if there's one that's having a problem or there's a question about it or something like that, then I can dive in deeper.
That makes a lot of sense. How has your style of underwriting as a LP or even as a GP, how has it changed from when you first started looking at these syndications? You're getting into it and you're understanding, okay, this is how the numbers work. This is how the returns work. What's changed in your thought process, and what's changed in what you think is a good deal between then and now?
I don't even, I'm not sure that I'll give some tidbits of it, but having been in the business now for 7 years that I've been looking at it, there's never been a one monumental shift in the way that I've approached the underwriting. It's been incremental over time. And for me to try to remember all the way back, I don't know that I can, but I learn different things as we go through, right? And also certain things have changed. I used to have a ballpark number for insurance before I'd get a quote from an insurance vendor, and that's gone up considerably, right? Price per unit. I've learned that I always work with a tax consultant when I'm trying to figure out the property taxes, because there's a bunch of stuff that they know that I can't figure out from just looking at the millage rate and doing, determining it that way. I understand that I have, I think, realistic expectations in the type of growth in income that we can have from one year to another, and especially from the T3 into your first year of operations. It's something that it's actually a standard that I use when I'm, a lot of these standards are standards that I use when I'm looking at an LP deal too. If the syndicator doesn't match that underwriting, then I'm not going to invest in it. And that's the underwriting that I expect to be able to present to my investors, right? Like I invested in my own deals, so my deals are going to be just as good as anything that I would invest in.
Right.
But you know, I see these. I'll just dwell on this for 1 minute. I see this underwriting that sometimes I just, you know, kind of boggles my mind, where their year one income is going to go up by this, you know, incredible amount. And a lot of times people can't tell that, you know, as a passive investor, a lot of times the syndicator is not presenting the T12 or the T3. I always do. I'm always showing them the T3 and the T12 in my investor summary, but a lot of times you're not seeing that. And so you're in a situation where, you know, they're going to have a 30% increase in revenue in the first year. And, you know, you buy a multifamily property and let's say you close on it on January 1st to be, you know, just to make this like nice and even, right? A good example. You're not really going to be able to affect rents until probably March, right? Because on January 1st, obviously all the January leases are in place. Right. Probably if the previous ownership and property management was any good, probably a good portion of February is already in place. And then probably some of March is already in place. Maybe not, right? But so you're really not going to be able to, and even if the lease is in effect, they've usually sent, I mean, because we're always sending out, starting 90 days in advance, we're sending out renewal notices. So they have gotten, at least March has gotten a renewal notice that tells them how much their rent's going to be. So the first chance we have to raise any rents is not going to be until April.
Right.
And typically, and this is a very general rule of thumb, and you could point out to me a million cases where this is not the case, but typically renters stay in an apartment for 3 years. So you've got maybe 30% of your property turning over any given year.
Right.
So that first year, that first month, April, you only have 1/12 of that 30% that you can raise their rent, right? And then the next month, then you get the next one. So you're not even going to make it all the way through the rent roll until the next April. You know, you've only got 9 months of rent roll to go through. Right. So you don't even have that full 30% of people to go through. It's impossible to raise the rents 30% unless you're buying an apartment that has a tremendous amount of vacancy. You're leasing it up, right? If you're buying a property that's 30% occupied, well, then of course you can. But most of these deals are stabilized properties. We're talking 90% occupied for the past 90 days or more. And I can't see, I've never seen anybody be able to raise rents more than, raise income by maybe more like 10%. Because even if you're doing other things like cable contracts or rubbing back, you know, on the utilities or all of those things, again, you have to wait until those leases are coming up and then do it on the new leases. And then you have people who are going to leave. And then you have vacancy. And then you're going to renovate the unit while it's vacant. And then you got to lease it back up. It's not realistic, I don't think.
Yeah. I see a lot of fuzzy deals being done. And I'm like, I don't know how you're going to achieve that, but more power to you.
So I used to be a little more aggressive with that in my earlier days about how much turnover there was going to be and how much I could increase that income into year one and year over year. And I've realized out of actually doing this and being successful, but also learning from mistakes to lower that number so that I can hit those numbers and maybe exceed expectations.
So I want to talk about or go into where are you at now mentally and just the general real estate space. So are you still doing LPs and GPs, just kind of whatever looks the best at the moment?
I've deployed a certain amount of capital into my LP deals. And right now it's as those properties sell, right, and we exit those properties, then I have that capital that I'll deploy into more deals as an LP. And then I also have, almost 4,000 units now as a general partner. And as we sell those deals, sometimes, I have more capital to deploy, and I'm always deploying capital into those deals. I'm still looking at deals right now. Last limited partnership I invested in was just a couple of days ago. Last deal I did as a general partner, we closed on in October of last year. Continuing to look for deals. Got a couple of things that have gotten really close. Nothing at the moment that we're in contract under at the moment, but always looking, analyzing, and at various stages in the process.
How does an investor get your attention? So, hey, I'm watching this podcast on Facebook or whatever vehicle that I run across, and I have a deal, and I shoot you a deal. You're very reachable, and you're very responsive, and I really appreciate that. I want to bring that up.
Oh, thanks.
What numbers, what thing that you'll see on a deal that says, hey, looks like it's a pretty good deal? Is it a specific IRR number? Is it maybe the area, like the region first, and then the returns? Or what piques your interest when you see a deal come across your table?
It's a little, I can tell you certain metrics that I look for, but I'll say this. If somebody was watching, us right now on Facebook and had this deal, even if it was like the deal of a lifetime, and sent me an email with it, the odds are I'm probably not going to invest in it. And the reason why is, as I mentioned before, the most important thing I think is the person who's running the deal. And so if I don't have a relationship with that person and I don't know who they are, it's very unlikely that I'm going to invest in the deal. However, Presley, if you're like, hey, this guy Joe, he's really great, I know him, I've invested in his deals before, they're really good, you should meet him. I'd want to meet Joe, right, and get to know Joe. And then maybe when Joe had a deal, or maybe when it's the second or third deal I've seen of Joe's, or when Joe has a little bit of a track record, then I would start to feel more comfortable doing it. So that's the most important thing to me. And this is really a relationship business from so many different aspects, but it matters to me who the person is who's running the deal first and foremost. Beyond that, in terms of metrics, I like to see deals that are, let me take a sip of water real quick. I like to see deals where there's a strong cash flow component. I think I mentioned earlier that I have a book, and in my book, I share these 18 different keystone concepts that I've learned along my journey. And keystone concept number 5 is cash flow is king. As long as you have really good cash flow, you can ride out the dips in the market cycles, and those are inevitable. There's always going to be ups and downs, but if you have cash flow, you can weather the storm when there's a storm and ride it out to the other side. And so that's really important to me, as a strong cash flow component. I like to see the deals that I invest in, if it's like a standard multifamily, value add type of thing, if we can double our money in 5 to 7 years, great. I don't want to see a refinance written in there as part of the deal. I want to see a deal that works without a refinance in year 3. I don't like a year of refinance in year 3. And before anyone starts hating on me about refinances, keystone concept number 18 in my book is refinance when you can. I love refinancing. It is wonderful. It is an amazing, amazing tool. But I want to invest in a deal that is not predicated on what my guess of what interest rates and cap rates are going to be 3 years from now for this refinance. Or this, I I have I post on, you've seen on LinkedIn, I write an article every month. I put it on my blog and everything. And I did one, gosh, almost maybe about a year ago now, called The Mythical Year 3 Refinance. And I always use like an image, and my image is like, there's like this unicorn, like standing on a mountaintop with wings. Like, I mean, sure, that's cool. Unicorns are cool. Just ask my 2 little girls, but like, are they real? I don't know. This year 3 refinance, look, if you can do it 100%. It's awesome if you're in year 3 and you're in an advantageous position 100%, but the deal should work without that.
Yeah, don't put it in your underwriting.
Yeah, or put it in your underwriting and be, hey, here's scenario without the refinance. Look, it works. And here's the scenario with the right refinance. Look how good it could be on the upside. But, it's got to work without that. So those are the kind of things I like to see. But, one of the most important things for me, and I've talked about this many times on several stages, in articles, in the book, I mean, just everywhere, is when I'm looking at the sponsor, I want to make sure that I'm aligned with them from a philosophical standpoint. And, true story, when I was very early on, my first deal that I was going to invest in before the airplane pilot was another guy, and he had some properties and in a certain location, and he would do tours at that location. So I went there, I went to the city and saw a bunch of the properties that this person had. And, I wasn't expecting, a palace, but what I saw was really run down. And these weren't properties that were just acquired. They were properties that had been in the portfolio for a bit of time and were really in a state of disrepair. And I mean, the guy has a good reputation of making people a lot of money, but I felt like he was a slumlord. Like he was making money at the expense of the tenants, is what I felt like. And I thought long and hard about it. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to invest in this deal. And that's really when I made the conscious effort of like, hey, like, I'm getting into this real estate game, but I want to make a positive impact. I'm trying to reinvent property ownership as a positive for communities. Landlords get such a bad rap. A lot of us are doing great. And I mean, we could talk for another hour about all the things we do at our properties to create community, to make lives better for the residents. I don't run a charity. We make good money. We make a nice profit, but you can do well by doing good. And the bottom line doesn't always have to be about the almighty dollar. You don't have to squeeze every last cent out of a property. You don't. You can still be very profitable and make a really handsome return and be an ethical human being. So that's what I try to do. The tagline for my book is produce passive income, write your own story, and direct your dollars towards positive change. And that's something I try to do. Just leave the world a little better than I found it. And that's something that I look for when I'm investing in other people's deals. I want to find someone who's of the same mind as me. I want to do well. I want to make money on my deal, but I want someone who's not going to be like a total jerk to everybody. And I want someone who's ethical. It's another thing I talk about sometimes, is like, there's certain rules that you're supposed to follow according to the SEC. There are people who skirt those rules. And besides the fact that they can get in trouble for it, right? And they shouldn't do it. Do you really want to invest your money in someone who's skirting the rules? Because like, what else are they skirting? What else are they kind of, on the underwriting, well, maybe I'll just do this because it makes the numbers look a little better. I always worry about that kind of thing. So I want to meet with someone who I think is sort of a straight shooter.
I don't want to skip this question. How can those watching or listening get your book?
Oh, well, the best thing to do is to go to my website, which is Picheny.com. It's P like in Peter, ICHENY.com. There's a ton of free resources there. If you go to the book page, you can actually download a free sample of the book. There's all those articles that are there. I mean, there's a ton of free resources. There's also a link to buy the book, which just came out on audiobook too. So if you don't want to read it, you want to listen to it.
Yep, I'm gonna get it right now.
Yeah, so there's the audio version of it. It's available also as a Kindle and paperback and hardcover and all that stuff. But everything's on Picheny.com. So I would encourage people to go there. You can sign up for my newsletter there, which is free. And every month I'm sending out investor tips and educational content. So it's I hope I hope it's a good resource for people. And like I said, everything's for free except for the book. So
yep, and I just got it. 6 hours and 23 minutes.
That's it. 6 hours and 23 minutes of this voice. I hope
that's all right.
I hope you can stand it for that.
Sounds like money to me. And the last thing before I see if anyone has any questions. Well, actually, I did want to ask you another question before I ask you the words of wisdom. When you are operating as a GP, what hat do you wear?
That's a good question. In the earlier deals, I wore all the hats. But as I've grown in my business, I have naturally found partners to work with, and we have naturally sort of organically found certain things that were more suited to doing and like doing better. As an example, there's a guy named Albert on my team. Albert was an actuary at a Fortune 100 company. He loves the numbers. He just eats, breathes, sleeps numbers. And he loves, like, every month going through every single line item in the general ledger and checking, and that price seems high, and this, and then check the invoice and all that. Like, and he's got, you know, a team that works with him on that, but that's what he loves. Like, he just loves that. I've done that on properties before. Definitely not my most fun task. So I let Albert do that. You know, my other partner, Justin, he does a lot. He's got a lot. Him and his brother have like more of a construction background. So they tend to do a lot more of the like CapEx type of work, a lot of the exterior improvements, that kind of work. I have a PMI background. So I'm a PMI certified project management professional. That I got that when I was working in advertising, but it just means I'm really good at managing people, budgets, and timelines. So I tend to do that. I often will be running the asset management meetings that we have. Also with my marketing background, I'm very much involved in, okay, well, what are our rents and what marketing are we doing and that kind of stuff. So that's sort of where I play. And we'll all do different things. You know, if Albert's out or something, we all can help each other out and step in on others' roles. But that's kind of, we sort of found our little sweet spots.
Yeah, it sounds like a family.
Yeah, we are. You know, we look at the deals together. I might find a deal through a broker connection I have, or Albert might, or Justin might, and we'll bring it in, and we'll all look at it. We'll all comment on the underwriting. We'll get it to a place where we feel comfortable. We'll all work on raising capital together, and then we'll all take turns with different parts of the asset management. So we're really involved through the whole life cycle of the deal.
Awesome. That's amazing. What words of wisdom do you have for those who are watching you? They want to be like you. They want to get to your level. What would you tell them?
Don't be like me. No. But seriously, be like you, right? So like, that's the whole point in the book is, you know, like that tagline, write your own story, like what works for you. That's the most important thing is how does it work for you? But something that's really important, I think, and I did mention this earlier, success in the real estate business and the multifamily syndication business, but also I think success in life is really about those relationships.
Yeah.
Making those relationships, you know, there's that thing, your network is your net worth is your network or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, the bottom line is, you know, building relationships and relationships of trust are good, strong relationships are very important. And being somebody that people can count on, that people can trust, being a person of your word, all of that is really important. Whether you're looking to sponsor deals and you want people to trust you to be a good steward of their capital. If you're also looking to sponsor deals and you want to get deals from brokers and property managers, you have to have those relationships. But even as a passive investor, you need to have relationships with those individual syndicators. A lot of these deals, they can't, they often don't, but can't just like shout them from the rooftops. I mean, if it's a 506c, yeah, they can put it on social media, and sometimes they do. But in a lot of cases, let's say, the deals and the people who are investing the deals are people who have a relationship with the sponsor ahead of time, or have a good friend that has a good relationship with them. So the relationships are really, really key.
That's amazing. And before I let you go, so I only check the Zoom for questions, because to go back between this and Facebook, it's too much. Does anybody on the Zoom have any questions for Matt before we let him go and enjoy his night with his family? And I always forget to take everybody off of mute. All right, you're all off mute now.
Oh, I see some familiar friends. Hi.
Let's see, make sure I didn't miss any questions or anything.
I didn't see who was on earlier. It didn't show the participants.
Yeah, people tend to come in and out. So and I never really try to look until the end, because when I first started the podcast, I would have the participants up, and I noticed that it will affect my interviewing style, because I'm like, oh, people are leaving. Why are they leaving? And it gets in my head. So now, if somebody comes on, great. If nobody comes on, everybody see it on LinkedIn anyway and Facebook. So I hide everything to kind of protect my brain.
That's cool.
Hey, Angel, what's up? Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. So, hey, Matt, I was just texting my friend, Frank Pedalano. He's on our GP team.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, like, Matt, he's an investor with heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see you. And Frank I love Frank. He's such a great guy.
Yeah, Frank's pretty cool. He's on he's on 2 GP teams with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great seeing you too.
Angel, how's your deal going?
The one I can't talk about, or the one I can?
We'll take another drink to that. So I guess the one that you can talk about.
Well, we like to invest here in our backyard. But everything's going actually pretty well. Expenses are a little crazy, but we're working on getting all that under control. Okay. So we're looking at doing some various streams of income, like other than just big, huge blanket rent bumps. Because I want to make sure that we're offering things to our residents that they can afford to pay for, and not things that they're being forced to pay for.
Yeah.
That's wise. For the new people who joined, you have the option to take yourself off mute and ask Matt a question or give him a comment before we let him go for the night. And thank you, Angel.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess I bored everybody, which is
no, you just answered all their questions. That's all. Well, Matt, I am excited to start on your book. It seems like I get a really good book to read every other podcast. So I'll be starting on your book. And
are you going to read it or listen to it? I'm curious.
Listen, I don't have time to read. I am always on the go. So yeah, it'll be me going probably to a meeting or looking at some property or something, and I'll just play it through the Bluetooth.
I'll be curious to hear your feedback, only because it literally just came out like not even a week ago on audio. Okay. So,
I'm an audio professional.
I haven't had any feedback yet on it. Okay. I'm happy with how it came out. I think it sounded really good. So yeah.
Was it difficult dealing with Audible and going through that whole process.
All right, you want to see what you want to see everything?
Yes.
All right, I've never shared this really. I can't believe I'm sharing this on Facebook and Zoom. This is what I did. So I wanted to record the audiobook, and I looked into a recording studio, and I live in New York City, and I had spent so much money on the book. I'll never make the money back on the book, like the cost to like get the cover design, like all the stuff that's involved in it. But I'm okay with that. But I was like, the audiobook, like, do I really want to spend another, $5,000 to $10,000 like for the audio? I'll never make that money back. And I had gotten this cool, I have this like cool microphone. So I was like, all right, I've got a nice microphone. I can just hook it up to my, computer and record this. But I tried that, and it was echoey, like really bad. This room. And so that's the good thing about going into a recording studio. So what I did, give me a second. I just have to reach over here and grab one of them. I bought 6 pieces of cardboard. They're 4 feet by 6 feet, and so I bought these pieces of cardboard, and then so I got those on Amazon, and then I bought acoustical tiles that are 1 by 1, 12 inches by 12 inches. That's what's on here. Okay, so each one of these squares is one of them. And then I bought this 3M double-sided tape and taped these on. By the way, these things were a pain in the butt because they come from Amazon all like compacted. So what you have to do, you have to take them and soak them in water.
Really?
Yeah, you soak them in water so that they fill back up. Then you have to wring them out, and then you have to put them in the dryer. And I had like probably 100, because look, this whole right. So I made a whole bunch of these, and then I strategically placed them around the room to do the recording, and it was still really echoey. So then I got to the point where then I took them and I put them, and I had one here and one here and one over, and I basically built like a little fort in my office. And my kids were like, "Daddy has a fort in his office." I mean, they loved it. But that's what I did to record it. Unfortunately, it got really hot in here from having that in there. Oh, and then there were still some gaps. So then I took a big comforter and threw that on top of it. And then I recorded it. And it took me like a couple of weeks of recording sessions to get it all done. And then every track I had was like 2 hours long. And the finished version, when you hear it, some of the tracks are 15 minutes, some of them are 45 minutes. I had to edit them because I would be reading my book and I would mess something up and I'd have to repeat it. My tongue would get tied. So it was just a lot of work with the editing and stuff. But I ended up getting it done. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I think the finished product sounds pretty darn good. Like, I don't know that, you could tell me when you listen to it, I don't know that you could tell that it wasn't done in a professional studio. It sounds, I think, really good.
I'm excited. Can't wait. Now I will start tomorrow as soon as I get in the car.
Thanks.
As soon as I finish, I'll reach out to you and let you know my thoughts.
Yeah, give me your, and don't hold back. Like I'm all for constructive criticism,
Okay. Well, I will, that means I'll put it in a email because I can be very, very tough critic.
Oh,
all right. Not really. I say that, not really.
Well, if you have nice things to say, review on Amazon or Audible would be amazing.
Yes.
So if you don't have anything nice to say, then just send
Leave
it
out.
email.
Will do. All right, going once, going twice. Any questions or comments for Matt before we let him go? Give them 2 seconds to see if they're unmuting themselves. Nope. All right. Well, sir, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your wisdom, and I'm excited for this book. And you've shown why people were so excited. You gave a wealth of information and through your experiences as well, and I appreciate that.
Well, thanks. I had a lot of fun talking with you tonight.
Yes, it
Thanks for
was a lot
having
of
me as a
fun.
guest.
Yes, thanks for coming on. And I'll be chopping up the clips and putting them everywhere. So I'll be seeing you a lot soon.
Oh, yeah. Please tag me. And again, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You too. See you later.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.